Thank you. Thank you for selecting your daily heart me with me. Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy New Year. Today has been a long day. And so today is the perfect day to pick an easy project. And so this project today is the baby star quilt. I keep doing it to myself. Let me turn that around. As I do not like to see myself in the flipped. Okay, here we go. Hey everyone. Hey Sabs, how are you doing? So that's better. I like to see it where I can see everything. So today we are working on a simple pattern. This is called the baby star quilt pattern. What I like about this pattern or any other pattern is that there's a simple block. And this block is blown up so big that it's the star of the show. And it's the only thing that we do for the entire quilt. This can be so scrappy, you could use up your scraps, or you could absolutely use yardage. I knew that was going to happen. Okay, there it is. So we can totally use up your scraps. So in this example, they're absolutely using up their scraps to make the baby star quilt. I will talk about some of the things that she does that are a little bit different and how I'm switching this up because, nobody got no time to be doing some of the things that they have listed here. But this is just real simple. It is calling, in order to make the quilt in a size 39 by 39 square, they're calling for 16 squares, 10-inch squares. 8 of them will be light, 8 of them will be dark. When you make a half square triangle, it's totally up to you to decide what is light and what is dark. But you want to have enough contrast between the light and the dark so that you can see the triangle and it is pronounced. And I thought, here they are. They're under my other fabrics. And so here are some examples of half square triangles, and we've been working on these all week in our videos. And these are half square triangles. So there's a light and a dark. And the dark can be printed, or it can be a solid, or it can read as a solid. So I have some that I've made. And then there are some, this is very directional with Santa Claus, but Santa Claus is cut off. And then there are some with little smaller prints, and then even smaller. But you can see how there is a dark and a light, and it doesn't matter if that light has a printed side on it or whether it is a solid size. So even with these half square triangles, I could make the baby star. It won't be as big as the pattern calls for it, but I could absolutely use these as well. So that's totally up to you, whether you want to use your scraps or whether you want to use brand new blocks. The blocks call for 10 inches by 10 inches in terms of squares. These are a little bit smaller than that. So my end result would be a smaller square if I use this, and then I would need more of them to give myself a decent size. So we know that we'll get through the top, but not necessarily we know we're not going to get to the quilting and the binding of it today, but eventually we will work on that. So the top itself is made up of these half square triangles. Again, you decide your colors. I will show you what I'm working with. And then they have a skinny border for their 39 by 39. you can make the skinny border and then extend it out and make a bigger border. So just by adding 6 inches on this side, 6 inches on this side, 6 at the top, 6 at the bottom, that's approximately another 12. Let's just go with 12, even though we know we have seam allowances. So then 12 plus 39 would be 51. So this would be a 51 by 51 inch quilt. So you can make it bigger if that's what you chose to do. You could add additional types of borders around it to extend it. That is totally up to you how you want to work that. Okay. So before we get started, and we're going to jump right into this, we have half square triangles. And of course I have examples because we've been working on half square triangles all week. So for the half square triangles, the method that we are going to use is to take 2 pieces of fabric and place them together. We're going to draw a line, and then when we cut them in half, after we've stitched them, we'll come up with a unit like this, separate them, press them open, and this is what gives us our half square triangle. We'll do some other things with it, but that's the method that we're going to use. Earlier in some of my videos, I talked about using a method, and this is what the pattern itself calls for here, where you can pre-cut your triangles. If you decide to pre-cut your triangles, which is not the end of the world to do that, that's perfectly okay. Just be aware that you're cutting on a diagonal, and this is the bias. So there's going to be some stretch in here. So you want to make sure that you're not pulling your fabric, because it will cause it to warp, and ultimately it will affect your straight seam line. So you want to be careful with that. I do want to point out that there's some freedom with the way they did it, because then they could decide when they wanted to put certain colors together, and they didn't have to think about what they were putting together as they were doing, like I will, ahead of time. I had to do some math and some thinking in order to get it to work the way I wanted to. So this way it just gives you freedom to put all your blocks together, decide what goes together well. I did that thinking in advance. Hey, RV. So let me move my prior projects out of the way, and let's talk about the fabric. So in my stash, I have this adorable purple. I have this green that I had from another project, the Starry Duo that I was working on. I have this purple fabric, and I have this green fabric. And so these are the colors that I chose to go with for my baby star. I've cut everything out. Everything is 10 inches square. That's what we're working with this. Hello, hello, everyone. How are you? What I did do was draw a picture because I was being lazy and I didn't want to go out to my car. But I will show you that they do give you a guide that you can use. So you can absolutely, as this coloring page, use this to decide the colors that you want. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for the compliment. I try. I try in school too. My kids don't always appreciate me. But anyway, so you can actually color this in to make it look like the star and decide where you want everything to go. What I did, because I didn't feel like going out to the car, and clearly I just went, I drew it myself. I can use, I just drew it, but you could use, thank you for getting your daily heart made, Miss RV. And so you can use either, I don't know, graphing paper, or you could just draw it out. And so I just drew it out and I colored it in to give myself an idea of what I wanted to do. Now, of course, I picked some colors that I don't have in this palette just because I didn't have a variety of greens and purples. So I just used the gray and the pink to mimic what I wanted. So once I got everything together, the white itself is going to be this light green. I'm going to use the purple in here and then the purple out here. And then I'm going to use that other light purple in here where the pink is. So that's the plan for what I want to do. Ooh, look, let me know when you want to make a t-shirt quilt. Hey, Anna J, because my t-shirts are already sitting in the chair and I need to get started because I have a lot of quilts, a lot of t-shirts that I made during the pandemic that I don't wear anymore. Just because I overwore them, but they're still good t-shirts. And so I want to turn them into a t-shirt quilt. So I am going to work on that. So I like it. I think it's a relatively easy thing to do. The quilting is the hard part. So this is what we're working on in my mind. In order to set that up, oh, I'm sorry. I had to think about what that was going to look like. So I knew that 1, 2, each of these is a full square. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 4 of these greens that will also come with the white. So that means that that is a darker green with a lighter green. Then I had the purples and then these 2 pinks. This is dark purple, light purple. So I need 2 of those. And then I need the dark purple white. And so then that's going to be the dark purple with this. And I think those are it. Oh, yeah, and the dark purple white. So that's what I need to think about. So I found that I need a total of, these are the total of the half square triangle squares that I need. And this is how many of the blocks that I needed to make it. So remember that we said we need 8 darks and 8 lights. So that's a total of 16 squares that we're going to use. So I have all 16. And then this is everything I needed to make it. Okay, so to get started with making the half square triangles, it's like you get everything together and then you look and you say to yourself, where did I put that? And I know it's here on the table. You take your straight edge, and what we're going to do is line up our ruler with the edge, with the corner of the square. And the one thing that I like to do is play with my eyes when I am working with lights on this white, on this white surface, because it all starts to blend in together. And I'm like, woo. And I'm just going to draw a line. I do use a pencil because I feel like I can see that a lot easier. No, I did this one, and I think I did this one. Okay, so I drew those lines. So I'm going to go ahead and finish those. Typically, we draw the line on the lighter fabric. And that's just because you can see it. Does it matter? No, as long as you can see the line on either one, or depending on the tools that you're using, you can see the line. So the line is not the stitching line. This is the line that we are going to use as a guide to stitch on either side of it 1/4 of an inch. In the quilting world, 1/4 inch is a normal seam allowance for quilts. There are a few exceptions to the rule where they might call for a scant 1/4 inch, or they may call for 1/2 or an 1/8, but those are rare. Usually it's with 1/4 of an inch. And so that's your friend. And that's one of the reasons why in quilting, when we buy feet for our machines for quilting, we buy, I think I need, this is considered a light. We buy 1/4 inch feet. So there are specific feet that you would buy for different projects, like a zipper foot, a buttonhole foot, a gathering foot. So there's all different feet that you could buy for projects that you're working on. In quilting, we would buy a 1/4 inch foot. That is our little cheat way of making sure that we get a 1/4 inch because the closer to a 1/4 inch we get, the better our seams are going to be and the more accurate our quilt blocks will be as we construct them. Okay, so everything gets marked with the line. We can move this out the way. And again, the directions for the Baby Star Quilt by Diary of a Quilter, they tell us that after we mark everything, we're just going to go ahead and cut it in half. We're not going to do that. What we are going to do, make sure I get my directions again, because, you know, I will not pay attention and then I'll do something wrong. And then I'll just say that was on purpose. But, okay. So what we're going to do is take the green ones that we have first, right sides up. And remember, we said we needed 4 of them, so I have 4 here. And we're going to take 4 of these green ones, and we're going to place them on the light ones on top of the dark greens. And again, you're making decisions on the colors that you're going to use. I chose to go with light green for my lights. And this is just light and dark. You decide what's going to give you the best contrast. It is totally up to you. Nobody said that light must be white. So we're going to have light skinned going on here. We're not going to have, this is going to come later, but I'll just move that out the way, because see, that's what happens when you're not paying attention. Okay. So we have all the greens that are here. Doesn't matter the direction that it's going in, because I can turn around the half square triangle the way that I need to. So everything is here. I can choose, if needed, I can choose to take clips and place them on either side. I could use pins. That's totally up to you. I usually don't use them, but you can. On either side of this line, a 1/4 inch on this side, a 1/4 inch on this side, we're going to stitch a line. This is our guideline. That's why we don't care that we drew this in pencil, because it's going to get cut anyway, and we're just going to go on either side. Happy New Year. How are you doing, Janine? Okay, so we'll take a couple clips that we'll have here. Move things out the way, and we're going to get to sewing. So I'm just going to take this, go to my machine, and I have thread and bobbins in place. I am using white thread here because of how light this is. I could go with gray. I could go with green. Going with green means that it might be nice to match up the greens. I go with white because I don't have to match anything. And I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side. A tip that I have is that I would rather have my 1/4 inch be a little less than a 1/4 inch rather than being greater than a 1/4 inch. Because you can trim a block down, you cannot trim a block to make it bigger. It is what it is with the size. So there's, like, if you mess it up and you need a 8.5 inch block and that block is 8 inches, you're out of luck. I'm just going to chain these, which means I'm just going to do one block right after the other. I'm doing one side of the line. And then once I finish one side of the line for all 4 blocks, I will go back and do the other side. Okay. And then again, it's up to you whether you use those clips or not. As you can see, I'll show you the clips, but then I don't use the clips. I am not pulling my fabric because even though I'm doing 2 at a time, and in the video we talked about this being the bias, which means it has the most amount of stretch. I still don't want to pull this because it's on the bias, and it will allow me, thank you for the rose, it will allow me to pull this so that it will warp. So I want to make sure that I don't pull as much as possible. Okay. In any sewing that you do, for the most part, there are a couple exceptions to the rule where I might do a little bit of pulling, but you try not to pull. Number one, because depending on what kind of fabric you're using, you could break your needle. Number two, because the machine is going to pull through the feed dogs the fabric through, and it's pushing it in that direction. So you don't want to pull it back towards you because it will in some way stretch your fabric and warp it. So sometimes people have a tendency to pull because they think they have to guide the fabric. All I need to do is just kind of rest my hands on the fabric, and it will automatically, the feed dogs are what's making it pull to the back of the machine. And my hands are just helping the fabric to stay straight. So I haven't cut anything. So what I'm doing is chain piecing. I'm just doing this right in a chain, one right after the other. Okay. And then we'll do the last one. What I like about half square triangles is there's so many different ways that you can lay out the blocks to make different patterns. So it's a great way to use up your stash. It's a great way to make something very scrappy. And so I absolutely love it. I'm gonna use my clips to separate these. Take the ones that I did have the clips on. And I'm just separating these apart from each other. Okay. So if we look at this, on either side, and I know it's hard to see it on white, on either side of this line, there is a seam, 1/4 inch on this side, 1/4 inch on this side. You can kind of see it on the back just a little bit better, but there's a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. I'm going to take my rotary cutter and my straight edge. Hey Liz, how are you doing, darling? And I'm just going to line that straight edge corner to corner. Okay, it's like we don't want to go into the next block. And we're just going to cut those in half. So again, from corner to corner. And I will be doing videos to show you how to make more than 2 half square triangles at a time. But this method helps us to make 2 at a time. Somebody needs to change their blade. It's a new year, it should be new blade. So please make sure that you are changing your blade and your needle. Make sure you're cleaning your machine, because you do want everything to work the best for you. And right now, my blade is hanging on for dear life because it's like, girl, I have done you well. Okay. So these are the 2 pieces again. Because we cut it right on that seam, I have a seam allowance on this side of a 1/4 inch. I have a seam allowance on this side of a 1/4 inch. Now I can take these and open them up. And here is my half square triangle. So we're going to press these real quick. if somebody doesn't drop the iron all over the place. What do I use for the 1/4 inch template? I have a 1/4 inch foot, and I'll show you, there's one attached to the machine. I actually have two, and I did a video on these, but I have a 1/4 inch foot, and on the side of the foot, there's this little metal guard. And when I put this on the machine, my fabric this runs right along the fabric, if it's the edge of the fabric, to help me to create the 1/4 inch. Or because originally I had the lines like this, they were together before I cut them. And there was this line that I drew down here. The edge of this guard was just sitting on top of the line, and I used that as the guide to create the 1/4 inch seams. Okay, so I do, of course, I have more than one 1/4 inch foot because, yeah, one may have come with the machine, or I bought, you know, the metal one after I had the plastic one, but they both work perfectly. If you buy a machine that is for quilting, it will come with the foot. If you buy a machine that's just standard, it won't come with the foot, and you will need to purchase a foot to go with the machine. We can be team press to the dark side. I've done a video, I just did a video this week on that. That would be to take my fabric and press this way. Or we can take the fabric, especially because there aren't that many blocks here. We only have 16 blocks. And we can just press open the block. So you could be team press open, or you could be team press to the dark side. This team press open. So I press it open, and then I just kind of lay my iron on top of it to get that seam nice and flat. Okay. So there are 8 of these all together. So we're going to get these 8 done, and then we will move on. So I will press these open. One of the reasons why we will press this open is because it will distribute the weight. As I'm pressing it open, it's distributing the fabric seam, the extra, onto either side. That means that it is going to be fabric on both sides of the half square triangle, so it kind of evens out the bulk. And so there are a ton of people that prefer to open up their fabric and press it open than to press it to the dark side. Depending on what you're doing with your half square triangles, sometimes those seams meet up and it creates a lot of bulk, and that's another reason why folks prefer to open up their seams. For the longest time, I was taught to press to the dark side. That means to press your seams to the darker fabric. This will help to keep the shadow of the fabric, if you will, from being dominant on the white, on the lighter side, because you can kind of see that there was a seam there. It's not the end of the world, and it's going to blend in, and nobody's really going to notice it that much, except for you. And unless you're in a show, it really doesn't matter. But what it also does is that when you take this and you press everything to this side, that means up to the seam, there is just on the light side, 1 layer of fabric. On the dark side, however, because the seam is on the dark side, when you're sewing, you're going to be sewing over 3 layers of fabric. The light side fabric, that is the excess, the dark side fabric, and then this square of the dark side. So what that does is it creates like a little unevenness like you would in the sidewalk. And I don't care how much you press and starch, there's that hump is still going to be there because of those 3 layers. And so when you do your quilting of the quilt, you will feel those humps and bumps. And some people prefer not to have them there for that reason. So they like to have them as smooth as possible. I don't know too many long armors that will tell you, please don't do it this way. But of course, they will always tell you their preferred way. Look, I'm not going to tell you ever that I can do a 1/4 inch completely by sight and be right. I can get close and I can figure it out just because spatially I understand what a 1/4 inch should look like. So I know if the seam is probably going to be too big based off of the size of the seam. And I'm like, that doesn't look like a 1/4 inch, because in my mind, I know what a 1/2 inch looks like. And I think that's important. Like when your children are in math class, here's the math teacher in me, right? And you're like, why do they have to go around the house and measure things that are an inch? And it's a pain, right? Because now you have to find stuff that's an inch. Is the penny an inch? Is a 1/4 an inch? How long is the paper clip? How long is this? How long? But the thing is that we want children and later on for them to become adults. And we want them to be able to look at something and recognize that that's not an inch. Or it looks like it's about an inch or a 1/4 inch. So you want them to, have some spatial recognition. I go to the hairdresser and she cuts my hair and I know she's cutting more than an inch. I'm like, girl, that is not an inch. You said an inch. And that's because I have that spatial recognition. If you don't have it, absolutely, she's going to cut 3 or he's going to cut 3. And you're like, wait a minute, it looks good. And it's like, nah, they cut off extra inches on me. So you always use some sort of tool to help you with your spatial recognition. You do not have to try to figure this out on your own. So I'm just going up the seam, one more block to go after this, and then I'm just coming on the top, because sometimes your seams don't always open the way that you want, even if you think they do. And so if there's little folds or whatever, ironing on top after I open the seam up helps me to kind of flatten that seam out a little bit more. Thank you so much. And usually I do okay with my colors. I did, my ruler slipped a little bit, so I can see, like on one of those, it looked a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. And then this one here, I'm struggling because this one is a little less than a 1/4 inch. It's not going to matter as much. But this is more like 1/8 of an inch, but that's okay because it's how we constructed those 2 blocks. I'll be fine. But that's why it just looks a little light, because apparently when I was running my mouth, I did not make sure that I was directly in the middle. And so, yeah, that happens. But it'll be okay. The block is still going to be the same size it's supposed to be. It's just that I'm going to have a little bit harder of a time opening this up. Look. And so I think now the ironing board itself it gets really hot. So I think my hands get used to the ironing board. So somewhere on there, yeah, it's team, don't burn your fingers. But the ironing board is what gets me more than the iron. So I usually keep my fingers away from the iron enough that I don't have to worry about that. But whoo, the ironing board, that's what takes me out. Okay, so that, like I said, that's a lot thinner than some of the other ones, but it'll be okay because of the way that we cut this. But if I were actually sewing each individual block, that would have been too thin. Okay. So we have a total of 16 blocks that we need. 8 of them are these dark greens and these light greens. We're going to do some squaring up, but let's get our blocks finished first. So I'm just turning them all in the same direction. And again, some of these concepts that we're using can go for smaller projects. So this is one size block, but I absolutely could make a 2.5-inch block. I could make a 6-inch block. I could make a 12-inch block. It doesn't matter. Same concept. So we're going to move these out the way. And again, for anyone who just came in, we are working on the Baby Star quilt pattern. We are making the half square triangles for the Baby Star quilt pattern. And so I've already made what I'm deeming the white is the light green for me. And I am working on the star. I did the outsides to be the dark green. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of these. 4 sets of these is 8. So I have 8 of these 8 of these half square triangles done. Okay. I'm going to just say more power to you with those hexies. So this is my guide. I drew it out because I didn't go out to the car to get it. And so right now I am using this as my guide. I drew everything out, wrote everything out that I needed, because if I don't write it down and it's up here, sometimes it doesn't translate when I get it down here. So we have finished the green ones. And now I'm going to work on the purple and white ones. These corners are going to be purple and white, and the centers are going to be purple and white. I need a total of 6 of those. Awesome. So yeah, absolutely. If you're listening along, you can work on your blocks as well while I am working on mine. Tell me why. In my infinite wisdom, I could not find the purple because I moved it somewhere. Okay. So 1, 2. Did I miscount this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Got that right. Okay. Because sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 2 of these for the outside and 2 of these and 1 of these for the inside. And I'll show you that again right after I just line these up, since I am in momentum. Why does it feel like I'm missing one? Put that over there, and then we'll place that right there. Okay. So here we go. And we have ×4. Okay. Oh, absolutely. Oh, a queen size quilt. So you can make a lot of half square triangles with the different techniques that they have, depending on how big your block is. Thank you for the 2026s. So here I have the 2 purples, 1 here and 1 here, that are purple and what I'm calling purple and light, even though it's white. So it's 1, 2. That means I need 1 square for that. A purple and light, and then these are purple and light in the corners. So there's 2 up here and 2 down bottom. So that means I need 1 set up here and 1 set down here. So that's a total of 3, and that's why I have 1, 2, 3. So explaining this to you, and then me actually sitting here and looking at this while I'm doing it, is ensuring that in theory, I should be doing this right. And the key word is should. So we're going to take these, again, we've lined these up. You can see the line in the center, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. I'm using my 1/4 inch foot. The foot itself, the question was asked earlier, so I can do it while it's here. If I take this 1/4 inch foot and I take the edge, that little metal piece that's right here, and I place it on this, I can use this as a guide to ride that 1/4 edge lead right along that, and I know my needle will hit exactly at a 1/4 inch. Ooh. Are you going to be free motioning on your regular domestic machine? This is my Husqvarna Viking. I call this my rider because this machine has also a free motion foot. I have a walking foot for it and a 1/4 inch foot for it. I've done all of my quilting in the earlier days on this machine. This machine's throat is not that wide. So when I tell you that that was a struggle to get that done, but I made it work. And that's because I was too cheap, because I can't say that I didn't have the money. If I was buying fabric the way that I was buying fabric, I had the money to pay your long armor. But I felt like, why pay the long armor when I can do it myself? So I quilted everything myself, and it took me longer, and I had more frustration than if I would have had somebody else do it for me. I'm just taking each piece now to my machine, and I am sewing on one side of that line a 1/4 inch. I am not breaking the thread, so I am doing what is called chain piecing. Hey Anna, hey Big Chantel. What I like about this is that if you make a smaller star, you can absolutely take that star and use it for, so if I make this smaller, I'm not making the size I have now, but let's say I make this a 24 inch star. I can absolutely use this on a tote bag. I can use this on the back of a jacket, on the front of a sweatshirt. I can use this as a pillow, as a table topper. So I can change the size of my half square triangles and make this smaller or larger and do other projects with them. Awesome. You know what? And it's so many people are not usually happy with their progress out the gate. So congratulations that you are having that experience right out the gate. Because there's nothing worse than to get frustrated when you are doing any sort of activity and then you kind of give up. And we know that we all have those projects, including myself, that it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out, and I gave up. So marks the era of projects that are upstairs in my craft room that I have not done anything else with since the first time that I started it. Because I was like, this is not working the way that I wanted to. Or I didn't have the tools that I really wanted to make it work the way I wanted to. Okay. So again, you can see, and I'm trying to angle this down, but you can see there is the line that I drew, and on either side of the line is a 1/4 inch seam. Or what should be a 1/4 inch seam, because sometimes I go crooked too. We're going to take our ruler, and we're going to line the ruler up with the line that we drew. Not on the seam, because we don't want to cut the seam. Awesome. What I like about this is that I can take, and I was going to use them, but I was like, I didn't have enough time to think about it. I could use my Ankara fabric and make something completely scrappy. And I thought about doing that for another project. But I can absolutely use my leftover Ankara fabric to make something scrappy out of that as well with the half square triangles. Because the Ankara fabric is also cotton. Okay, move that out the way, because some of us will absolutely cut off the edge of something not paying attention. Wonder who that could be. Okay. I'm still trying to perfect those scrunchies. So I have a total of 6 stars that I needed that will be light green and purple. These are my light green and green. And again, I will take these to my machine and press them open. Thank you for tapping the screen. We are almost at 10,000. Yes. Thank you for the heart me's. We know that as we are switching to the new era in the last year of this platform, that, you know, they change how you interact with lives and with hosts. So the more that you tap the screen, send your heart me's, and talk in the chat, the more engagement there is. Thank you, darling. And I have so many, it was like, which green, which green? So, you know, when I'm looking at stuff, it's like, and then I have the nerve sometimes, and I didn't do it for this, but of course I have the nerve to say, and I don't have the green I want. I actually didn't have a darker green. Let's put it this way. I could not put my hands on a darker green because I just started looking tonight. So I couldn't find a darker green. And I know that I created a quilt using the darker green, so it's possible that I may have used that darkest green. But I'm still convinced that somewhere in all of the stashes, I have a darker green. Because I'm a person that likes to buy solids or fabrics that read as solids or blenders. Things that will go with prints that are solids or read as solids. My favorite color is orange. I love orange. I love orange and blue. I have not made an orange and blue quilt yet. So I, of course, have 2 dresses along these lines that are both orange and blues because, yeah, I think orange shows up well with my skin tone. So I like the orange for that reason. It's one of the reasons why I like orange. But I don't know. It's a neutral color to me. And so I like it for that reason. When I quilt, I am a bright quilter. Hey, Charmaine, Happy New Year. Oilers colors. Oh, okay. Happy welcome back to school, darling. I know you were so happy yesterday to return. So we're just opening these up. And again, you would make the decision whether you want them open or closed. And interestingly enough, we opened our fabric more back in the day. No, I'm sorry. We pressed to one side back in the day before we began to do a lot of quilt designs because your needle would go in between the seam. And if it went right in the ditch in between the seam, it was possible that you could break your thread. Lincoln University. Oh, okay. Ooh, Holly, welcome in. So if you pressed it to the dark side or to one side, you could capture the fabric itself in the quilting and were less likely to break your thread. Now, with all of the different quilting methods and quilting all over and all around the seam, you're less likely to break the seam, especially in several different places that you don't have to necessarily worry about splitting that seam and then trying to repair the quilt. How much did I pay for my sewing machine? This is 20 years old. So I can't really say what I paid for this because it's been so long. I want to say that it was probably around maybe 500, maybe back in the day. It might have been lower than that. May have been. But like this worked. It's not the digital one, so it's a lot more manual with what I have to do with this. But like I said, it's a workhorse and it gets the job done. So here we go again. We are working on the baby star. I am making all of the half square triangles for this. Once the half square triangles are made, I can do some squaring up of them. We'll talk about the squaring up of it, and then we will just put them together. And we'll talk about how we can put them together, how this can get constructed that makes the most sense. There are a couple different ways that you can do it. And again, it is up to you how you want to put it together, but I will share with you how I possibly could put this together just because of the way that this is designed. To help me out, I have a cheat sheet. This is the picture that I drew. I did not use the coloring page that they had because that required me to go out to the car, and I was like, not going out there. And it was a really warm day. There was no reason why I couldn't go out there. What website do we get the pattern from? I'm sorry. This is a diary of a quilter. You can put in baby star quilt pattern, diary of a quilter. It is a free download. Okay, so I have made my 8 green, and I called it white just because I needed to tell the difference, and I want to say green and green. So I made my 8 green and greens. I've now made my 4 dark purple and greens. What size will this be? And so now I need to make a dark purple. Am I reading that right? Look, because you know. Oh, okay, I see what I did. I did the same thing twice. And then I need a dark purple and a light purple. Okay, so that's the last thing that I need. This will be 39 by 39, so it'll make a decent sized table topper, or it will make like a baby quilt. If I want to make this bigger, oop, there goes my piece. Let me move that. Good job, Jen, on the first try. Hey, Shamir. So if I want to make this bigger, I can add another border. I can either extend this border that they suggested out and make it wider, or I can add a second border. So let's say that I decide that I want a 6-inch border. Don't ask me about, I could do the math for the seams real quick, but let's just take the seams out. This is finishing at like 39 and a half inches squared. I could add 6 inches on this side and 6 inches on this side. If I wanted to, I can make it wider. It could be 8 inches. So if I do 6 and 6, that's 12. 12 plus 39. And again, I'm not considering the seam allowance just yet, but that would be 51. So I could make this 51 inches square, which would give me a bit bigger size baby quilt. So you would just decide how big you want it for whatever you're using it for. If it's just something short and cute, sometimes you want something for the nursery and you just want a cute little baby quilt to throw over the crib, then you could make something small. It could be something that lays over the little baby while they're sleeping. They don't need anything big because they're only but a minute. Or you could make it a little bigger, like I usually like to do, because then it gives them some wear so that they're like not finished with it 2 seconds after, because now they're like, you know, toddler size, like whoof. And then it's like, now what do I do with it? And some kids, if they still like it, they carry it around like Linus, and others leave it in their room on the rocking chair. So it just depends. Okay. So the last block that I need to make, and somebody can't count, so she needs to get that other piece that she had. is going to be a dark purple and a light purple. Again, right sides together. If you choose to clip, you can clip. I'm not. I'm going to sew to, and again, for anybody who came in late, on either side of this, on the middle of this, from corner to corner, I drew a line. It's going all the way down, and I am sewing a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. Look, and it's funny because I have a cousin who one day I went to visit his grandmother, and I took a quilt with me. And I was working on the quilt while I was visiting with my aunt. And my cousin, he asked me, he was like, "What are you making?" And I told him I'm making a snowman quilt. And he was like, "That is so cool. I wish I had a snowman quilt." And maybe he was about 6 to 8, right around then. That's how long ago this was for him. And he was like, they would call me Cousin Jennifer because they put titles on it. And he was like, "Cousin Jennifer, how much would it cost for me to buy a quilt like that?" Now, the real answer, right, is that you're family. And I would not charge family for anything. But because you're asking, right, you're a kid. And I'm not going to charge you what I could charge you for a quilt. I might charge your mama or your grandmama, but I'm not going to charge a child. So I was like, they're expensive, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, "Oh, no, but I have to know how much it is because I want that quilt." So I told my little cousin, "I'll tell you what, I will gift you the quilt." And he was like, "No, I have to pay for the quilt. I want to pay for the quilt." I said, "Well, I'll gift you the quilt. And then when I need something, you can work it off." And he said, "Okay." So somewhere upstairs in my closet is this promissory note that he wrote telling me that he owed me services for the quilt because he bartered that he would do some work for me in place of this quilt that I made. And he never forgot it, and I never forgot it. And shortly after my mom had passed, I needed some work done in my yard, in her yard. And when Mike was talking to his aunt, and she was like, "He still owes you some work. He says, when is he going to pay for that quilt?" And I said, "Well, they can come over here and they can, cut these weeds." So she brought him over and he cut the weeds for me because he owed me for that quilt. So, he paid for his quilt, and we know that really, he didn't pay for the quilt for doing a little bit of weeds, but, it was all about, earning, by paying your debt off. And so he absolutely did that. And so in the meantime, it was a snowman quilt, and he named it Snowmanny. So Snowmanny went everywhere that he went, and he took care of that quilt. It probably needs to be repaired after probably almost 15 years. It probably needs some repairs, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know what it looks like. But he absolutely adored it. So that was the important part. I know what's even more heartwarming, thank you, is the fact that when they would take pictures of the kids going places, he absolutely had that quilt with him. So he had it in the car when he was asleep. He kept that quilt, and he kept that quilt all the way up till, he became an adult. He had his quilt. It would be on his bed. My family is funny like that. They took pictures of him with this quilt. Like, he kept that quilt. And when his cousin had a baby, the little one wanted to use his Snowmanny, and he was like, "Well, you can borrow it, but you have to get your own." Like, the movie back in the day. "No, could I borrow that record?" "No, my brother, you got to get your own." So, he told baby Ireland. She had to get her own quilt. And so, of course, then my cousin had to come to my house and she was like, girl, we need to figure this out because I need to give Ireland a quilt. Because, you know, he was not giving it up. Now, you grown, but that's okay. He loved that quilt. And that's one of the times where I really loved that I gave something to someone who appreciated it. And who would think that it would be a child, but absolutely it would be a child. Okay, so once the blocks are finished, cutting the block and using the accurate size for cutting the block is key. Using the proper seam allowance is the next step. Pressing it and getting it nice and flat, and then trimming it. Those are all important. So there are different rulers that you can get to help you with this process. For the half square triangle, this ruler has a diagonal line, if I can get my hand to it right, has a diagonal line that will help me to trim this block up. If I do not have this ruler, it takes a little bit more work, but it can be done. I can use the lines on my mat and line the seam line up with the diagonal on the mat. I'm going to line it up with the edge line, and then I can trim all the way around with my straight edge ruler. And I know it's like, girl, that's a work. Yup. Because you would have to lay it down at whatever this is. And this would be like 9.5 inches. So I'd have to lay this down. I would trim off the extra, do the same on each side until I've trimmed up each block. 16 blocks. I'm using this 4 different times. So I'm going to do 64 different cuts. If I have rulers that look like this, and I don't know where my bigger one is, I see it, I see it. I have rulers that are different sizes. They all, if they have this diagonal, it doesn't matter the brand, it's that diagonal. If they have that 45-inch diagonal, it doesn't matter the size, I can line up that seam line on that diagonal, determine how big the block needs to be, and then trim it up. And this way I can trim 2 corners at one time. Because I have a block that fits this size, I don't have to use the bigger one. As you knock the thread off your machine. And that's because you're not using the right thread, but that's beside the point. Well, I'm using a cone on top of a regular machine. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to line this up so that the diagonal line is here. This needs to be 9.5 inches square. The excess is out here. And I can do 2 sides. The sizing matters because if each is a little off, when you put them together, your rows might be off. So sizing everything up really helps to get accuracy in the quilt as you go along. So as I'm building the design or a bigger block, because this could be a part of a smaller block, making it into a bigger block, I want to make sure that I have it all that excess as much as possible. Most people will go a little bit bigger than the size of the block when they're telling you to construct it so that you'll have this little bit left over. We should not have a lot of fabric. It should be scraps like this or even less. And then here is our great perfect block. I want to make sure as much as possible that that diagonal is right in the corner. And then that's a good one. And again, there's a possibility that it may not work out as perfect, and there are some blocks if you look close enough on some people's quilts. And I'm not saying to judge or criticize, I'm just saying that even the best of us will be a little off. But if you make sure that everything lines up and you take your time to trim this, it really helps in getting those things to line up and to be as accurate as you possibly can. I love, again, the square, because this square ruler allows me to do two sides at one time, and it allows me, and I'll show you that, like if you weren't watching that for me, it allows me also to do some interesting things with it that I couldn't do with the bigger ruler. So with this ruler, again, I would have to line it up, and I have two lines here. So I even have one this way, and I would have to move this to get each side, or I would have to move this and then realign using this. With this square ruler, I can set this in the center, line everything up, and like I said, it should be close. So I shouldn't have a whole lot left. I want to make sure that every part of my block is underneath the ruler. I'm pressing down, and when I use my rotary cutter, notice that as I move the square, I'm also moving the block, and it's not shifting. Now, if Anna is still in here, Anna's probably like, Jennifer, didn't you buy that expensive turntable Big Mac that you're not using that would save you the aggravation of doing that? And the answer would be yes. And it's downstairs, but I'm not using it right now. So I'm going to lie and give you a good excuse and say it's because this is a beginner class, and I don't want to overwhelm people with a whole bunch of expensive tools that they don't have to get. I bought that turntable for convenience because it keeps me from turning the fabric, and I can turn the mat. So maybe I'll add that to a video, but this, like I said, this is for beginners. This isn't for the folks that like to spend a whole lot of money on stuff that they don't use the way they should. Maybe that's a theme for a video. Look at all the stuff that I bought that I don't use like I should. Okay, so again, we're lining it up. And this is going to allow for some of the wonkiness, again, the excess that may be in the block. And we should be able to get through all three of these. So when I started with this, I started with 10-inch. I started with 10-inch squares. So this particular pattern called for 10-inch squares. When you sew the squares together and make the two half square triangles, you lose a little bit of inches on it, and that's why we're squaring it to 9.5, because you lost a 1/4 inch for the seam allowance. And so you have to, allow for that when you're figuring it out. So you're never going to have a 10-inch square and then end up with a 10-inch block. It's not going to happen. So if I start off with a 5-inch square, I'm probably going to end up with somewhere around a 4.5-inch block when I finish putting these together, because in the center, I have that 1/4 inch seam. And remember, 1/4 plus 1/4 is 1/2. So you've lost that in the seam. So then that shrinks the size of the block down to about a half, down by about a 1/2 inch. So if I started off with a 10-inch, I'm now ending up with about a 9.5. And so, when we talk the math, it makes sense for why when we're thinking about it, sometimes it doesn't do that. So the other great thing about that turntable, right, is that sometimes even the best hand, your fabric will shift. So it is better to use a turntable. On the back of these, right here, and you can hear it a little bit better than you can see it, this is medical tape. So I cut the medical tape down and put it on the back of the ruler. I don't care what ruler you use. If you put the medical tape and you get a whole roll, so there's plenty of it, on the back of your ruler, that's what's helping the ruler to stick to the fabric, which is why when I go to turn it, the fabric is turning with the ruler. So that's one of those tips and tricks that doesn't require you to spend a whole lot of money, because you can absolutely buy the dots and use those dots to keep your fabric from slipping. And if you bought your rulers from the TikTok shop, then absolutely you could get that medical tape out, and this will keep your fabric from slipping. So we're just going through each block, and then once we finish squaring or trimming these blocks, then it'll be time to put all this together. I'm telling you, I took a power nap. I didn't think it did anything, but clearly I am feeling the energy right now. I didn't go all the way to the edge on that one. Okay, we won't live like that. Live on the wild side, because with how I was getting ready to cut that. Because I was getting ready to live on the wild side. And then whenever I do that, I always get a quilter that comes on here that's like, oh, why are you cutting like that? So there are a total, Gypsy, of 8. There are a total, oh, Lord, I'm adding 2. There are a total of 16 blocks. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 across, and 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So just a total of 16 blocks. And these are big blocks, so it makes a big star. There are a couple different star patterns. Some you can purchase. This one is free. I try with my lives, if when I can, to promote free patterns, especially for beginners, because you spend a lot of money on the machine, and then you're trying to stock up on your supplies, and then you have to pay for the pattern too. I do believe, and I always say, a servant is worthy of their hire. So I do believe that people should get paid for their talent. So I don't have a problem buying patterns, and I have bought a lot. I bought pattern books. I bought pattern making machine, quilt making magazines. But like I said, free works too. So if we can get a free pattern as I drop the phone, then that works as well. Did I skip an edge? That was 3. 1, 2. I see it. And again, depending on the stretch of this, you may have a lot to trim off, or you may have a little. Thank you. Still can't keep up that. Now you gotta look. I need to come over here to Hoarders Anonymous, because there is plenty of fabric over here. Okay. So again, we're just going through. How many more? I think I got 3 more. 3 more to do after this one. So one of the things, half square triangles help to make some pretty block shapes. Absolutely fabulous. And depending on the quilt, Those half square triangles can be very small or very large. And sometimes, depending on what I'm working on, I may have to do them in spurts because it's a lot. It's redundant to sit here and just cut and trim up blocks. So sometimes I'll sit and make the blocks one day, and then another day I'll trim up the blocks. And then I get to constructing the quilt or the quilt blocks, whatever I'm making after that. But you'll come up with a system that works. But like I said, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm not for it. Okay. Did I say I had 3? Now I know I have 3. No, I still have 4 because I can't count. Okay. So the greens were the most, but this is the last color that I have to do. But again, I'm lining up, and I'll show you that again. If you just came in, I am taking the ruler. This is a square ruler or square grid, and I am taking the diagonal line and lining it up with the seam so that it's right on the diagonal. That guarantees that I should have enough fabric evenly on both sides. And I am trimming the excess off. This started off as a 10-inch block, so the pattern calls for a 10-inch block. As I said earlier, when I did mine, I did the method of 2 at a time. I did not cut my triangles, my squares in half, and then make the half square triangles the way that the pattern called for it, because doing it the other way was easier. And it also reduces the amount of stretch that you could possibly have when you're taking it through the machine, because the diagonal is on the bias. And so this is the way that they tell you in the pattern to cut it. And what happens is, along this edge, you can see how it, like, it's almost curving, right? Because this is the bias of the fabric. So it has the most amount of stretch. And because I'm not using this for anything, I can do this. But if I pull at it, which is what you could do when you're doing it through your machine, notice how it's starting to look curvy, and notice how it's warped. So we want to make sure that we don't have that. And one of the ways that we do it is by how we handle the fabric, or by doing the 2 at a time method. Plus, it's faster because you're doing 2 at a time rather than 1 at a time. Do you backstitch your squares? So I don't, but you can. Sometimes with the back stitching, depending on how you're squaring down your things, you're going to cut off the back stitch. So if I knew, like if I were paying attention and I said, okay, well, these are going to be close to 9.5 inches, and I'm only going to be shaving off a little bit of this, and all my blocks are going to be perfect, then what I could have done at the beginning and end of each block was I could have backstitched, because I'm not cutting that much off at this point where it would matter. But sometimes I am creating blocks using the strip piece method, and when you do that, you're going to cut into the seam, and so it doesn't matter whether you backstitch or not, you're going to have a seam that is weak somewhere. So I just go rogue and I take my chances. But I will say that because I know that the seams are weak because I didn't backstitch, then what I don't do is I don't pull on it so that they begin to separate. But you'll see with the diagonal one more than with the straight ones, they really don't come apart as much as when I have straight squares or rectangles that I'm subcutting. Hey, Miss, how are you doing, Miss Levette? So we're going to just get this in here. Thank you for 12.7K likes. Thank you for hanging out. And thank you for asking questions as we are squaring up the last half square triangle. Oops. And yes, I will clean up the floor as I go. But I just find that sometimes when I am trimming, it's easier just to swipe and let it hit the floor. And then I will just sweep it all up and put it into my bin in the end. Okay, so all of our blocks have been trimmed up and we're ready to put them together. So let me show you. You can take this and put this together in rows. So the first row would look like this. The second row, then the third row, and then the fourth row. Or you can put them together in 4 patches. One like this, 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 and this. And what you'll see is, you see how it looks like a fish's open mouth, if you will? That's the same open mouth here, 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 and here. So the only difference is I have what I am calling purple purple here and here and here, and I have purple white here and I have purple white here. So basically they're going to look the same with the exception of those opposite ends. So I can go ahead and make them like a 4 patch instead of like in rows. What's the difference? The difference is that if I make them like a 4 patch, I keep them square. And there's less likely, it is less likely that when I'm stitching this, that I'm pulling, because I'm not going across a straight row and trying to keep everything straight. And sometimes it's easier to work in 4 patches. So that's my preferred method, is to use the 4 patch method. But you can absolutely go in rows, or you can do the 4 patch way. Yes, because it does. It helps to square it up along the way. Doing a 4 patch is so wide that not the 4 patch. When you do the rows, it's going to be so wide that you may not have a ruler to square everything up, but you can get it on your mat in those 4 patches to hopefully make sure everything works. So Jennifer needs to take the picture that she drew to make sure that she does this correctly. And I know that I have because I'm going to show you how I'm going to stack it. I have a purple that's going to be up in this corner. We'll leave that there. I am going to have a green that's going to be down in this corner. I have another green that's going to be in this corner. And then I either have my purple light or my purple dark that's going to be in this corner. So the block itself, I'll move my machine out the way, or I could just move the camera. The block itself, this four patch that I'm going to make is going to look like this. And the great thing is, if I rotate this like this, but I would change this block out. Let me show you what that would look like. Now this looks like this corner. If I rotate this again, same block, right? Now it looks like one of the bottom corners. So these are all the same block. The only difference is that 2 of them are going to have this center and 2 of them are going to have equal of these. Each block is 9.5 inches square. So I could take all of these and just stack them because I'm going to make these in a 4-patch. I need 4 blocks to make this star. And this is going to make it so much easier to put this together. So there's 4 of them going in each one. Let's see if Jennifer can count. And Jennifer should have been able to count, so this should not be a problem. Jennifer should have extra. They never have a few. And then here are the 2. So these are the 2 purple purples. And then I have the 2 purple purples. That's the purple pink. And then I have the purple white, which is the purple green. Yes. So, Sue, I started with a 10-inch block. I used the direction called for us to cut each of the blocks into triangles. I did not do it that way. I used the two half square triangle method. That's just to leave the square as it is, draw a line down the center, because this is the line right here down the center that we would have drawn. I sew a 1/4 inch on either side and then just cut them in half. So I altered the pattern slightly in the method that I chose to use. You will find, and I said this in the video, older patterns tend to call for triangular cuts rather than doing the 2-step method. Some newer patterns will call for that just because people use what was tried and true, and they don't go and venture out into that because sometimes it doesn't work, depending on the pattern that you're making. So, you can change it, and that's what I did because I found it was going to be easier, or you could leave it the way it is. So it started with a 10-inch block. Because you're going to sew that 1/4 inch in the center to make those seams, it drops the size of the block down to about 9.5. So then when you square these up, these end up being squared up at 9.5 inch squares if you use a true 1/4 inch. Okay. Yes, I love that method. So here we are, 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of these are a patch. So even though they are no longer solid squares, we can still treat it like a 4-patch. When you create a 4-patch, you sew 2 blocks together, and then 2 blocks together, and then you sew those 2 blocks together to create a 4-patch. When we do this, and we're going to use all of these, I'm going to sew 2 together, 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 2 together. And I do it that way because it keeps the units together. I took all this time to make sure that everything was arranged the way it was supposed to be. What I don't want to do is do all these units first and then all these units second, and then I have to remember what order it went in. This is a little easier because the colors, I don't have that many different colors, but if you went completely scrappy, what would happen is if you had a lot of reds and you took the time to really sort through them to make sure the reds weren't touching, if you change the order, sometimes you go back and you can't remember the order it was supposed to be in. This way you can keep everything together, and I'll show you what I do when I chain pieces together. So I'm going to just take the first one and flip it over, and take the second one and flip it over. I don't care if you go right, left, right. You're just flipping either from right to left or left to right. You pay attention to the flip because this middle is the seam. So I'm going to take my time, which is why I don't take them out of order. Line everything up, and then take it to my machine, and we square them up. So these should fit. I should not have any overhang. Keyword is should not. Okay, somebody doesn't have their needle threaded because they knocked that out. So let me do that. Yes, it should, by the time you finish, it should be about 39 by 39. And you can go on to A Diary of a Quilter. And it is called The Baby Star. And they will also show you other variations that you can do as well of the Baby Star quilt. They will show you different borders that you can do for the Baby Star quilt. And they're giving you all of this for free. So, you know, I make sure that I'm not sitting here and saying, hey, because I could, right? I could show you how to do this without a pattern. And then I could tell you in theory, this is the way you do this, and not give credit to the person who had the pattern. I don't believe in doing that. She worked hard to make the pattern, and whether I follow it completely or not, I'm going to give her credit and reference her site. So all I'm doing is just taking the block, the top first, the bottom second, and I'm going to chain stitch these. They should line up. You could clip or pin if you choose. I'm usually pretty good with eyeballing it so that I can get them to line up the way that they need to. But if you're a little insecure in what you do, absolutely clip them. So I'm taking the second set. We're lining them up. And I'm going to continue to chain piece. So when I'm chain piecing, I'm not cutting my thread after each set. I'm just starting the next set. And they're all going to be chained together when I finish. And thank goodness we only have 4 sets to do. And this is one of the reasons why I like the Baby Star, because this does come together quickly. And in some cases, when you're going live, folks want to see the final result. So it's nice to be able to do a quilt that you can finish. Now, I will say this. I'm working on what is called the Baby Star. Can you do this with any quilt block? Absolutely. You could get your grid paper out. You could draw it. Think about the measurements for the final quilt and determine what size each block should be. And you could make the Carpenter Star. You could make the Ohio Star. You could make virtually any quilt that you want. Any block, I should say, that you want. And make the blocks, these squares, bigger to achieve the same look. I could also take this pattern and make the blocks smaller. I need 16 blocks. And if I go, let's say 5 by 5, if I square it up so it's 5 by 5, I would have 4 across. That's about 20, and we're not talking about the seam allowance that's in there. So it'd be 20 inches, take out the seam allowance, add the border, and I could make it a pillow. So I could take the scraps that I have of this same exact fabric and make a pillow to match. And a lot of times I will do that. I usually use it with an orphan block, but I absolutely could make a smaller block. Here's the last one. Again, we're flipping it over. Flip, flip. Okay. Thank you, Shamir. She is live and awake and helping me out in those comments. Thank you, darling. You know I appreciate you. Love you dearly. Even though I'm still waiting to take a picture of my quilts with the ducks. I'm not bitter. I'm not jealous. Them ducks don't come out for me. They didn't. This duck said a star is in town. They came out for the star. Okay, and then we'll do this last one here. And I do make sure that my seams are still laying flat because I did press them flat. Sometimes when it goes under your sewing machine foot, it does have a tendency to push back towards you. So it's not the end of the world, but you do want to make sure that you can lay them as flat as possible. Okay, so everything is chained together like a little banner. I'm going to leave each of the units together in twos. So I'm going to snip every other. And I'm going to open this up just so you can see it. It's going to naturally do what it's supposed to do because those units are together. I'm leaving two together. And if I mess up, right, I'm not paying attention and I snip them separately, it's not the end of the world. Okay. But this is a great check system to make sure that you put it in the right order. Because let me tell you how many times I can do something and not pay attention to what I did and I sewed the wrong side. And so to avoid that, I'm going to lay it back out. And what I'm looking for is this hourglass look to make sure it's in the right space. I said I could do something like someone with Dr. Jen keeping it real, because I keep it real. I mess up. Okay, so they're all together. And what we can do now is we can press it. Sometimes I don't. And then we can flip it this way. And I'll tell you why, because I can get it just about right without pressing it. So sometimes I won't press it. And then I can line up my seams and then I just press it at the end. And that's just me. But you've got to do what makes sense for you. I will take the time though to take my fingers, because this is the important part, is right at the seam. I'm making sure that I open these up and I'm just finger pressing it. And if I had my roller, I could just lightly press it with the roller, but the finger pressing will work. And I just want to open up those seams. And then I'm going to line the seams up. Now remember, we still have that piece of thread there. So it's not going to pull too far apart, but I don't need it to pull far apart. Line those seams up. And here's the first time you're going to see me use a clip. And I'm going to clip that. Okay. And you can see right where I pressed it with my fingers. So it's just enough so that it's out the way. They're pressed nice and flat. I do take the time to finger press those. And if I can open this up just a little bit, what I'm going for is to make sure that everything lines up on this side. Okay. Now I can take these back to the machine and press, and let's use a clip on this side. And this is just because it's a little longer now, and I do want to make sure everything stays together. Because I trimmed my blocks, everything should still line up. And you can see that there's not a lot of, and I'm not pulling tight or anything, but you don't see a lot of wave or gap because I took the time to trim the squares to size so that they're all the same size. If you didn't do this step, it is possible that they don't line up. Now you also notice that when I trimmed them, there wasn't that much, right? There were these little itty bitty shavings. So it's possible that they still could line up with a little bit of tug and pull. And you could make it work. A little bit of starch, a little bit of steam, but you don't want to gamble with your quilt. So you want it to be as accurately if you want the accuracy to be as close to perfect as possible. Because the less tugging and pulling you do, the flatter the end result will be. And this is key, like for people who want to take these and then create things like skirts or jackets out of quilt blocks. You want everything to be as tight as possible, so then when you go to the next part, you know, everything lays flat. Okay, so we're going to flip. Remember, we flipped right to left or left to right. Now we're flipping top to bottom. I'm taking the time to open up my seam. I could press them if I like, but again, I just choose to finger press these open. Now, either my heat just came on or, okay, we're not going to discuss that. What's that work like? Are you flashing? Okay, so now I discussed it. But yeah, that's why I don't show myself on camera, because I'll be real shiny. Then I'm going to open this up. And I am just pressing again with my fingers to press those seams flat, because they'll go flat without an iron. I'm lining the seams up. I'm going to use my clip. Feel free to use a pin. And then I'll clip the one end, the finished end. And then let's do the next one. Don't laugh at me with my, oh, look, I'm sitting here sweating. You don't see that glow? Okay. I was watching the boys play basketball today. They had a game after school, and I was like, why is the ref sweating? I guess he was running up and down the court, but it looked like he was sweating more than a kid. And again, for the question that was asked earlier, this is a great time to just, you know, backstitch to secure those seams. Again, flip down. I'm going to finger press the seam open. And then when I finish this last one, we will take it to the iron and we will press these blocks open. And then we will again have another 4 patch, because there are 4 of these that are finished, and we'll be able to put them all together and the block will be done. Okay, let me see. I had a question. Oh, yes. Yeah, I use the rotary cutters. You can use scissors. You know, back in the day before there were rotary cutters, people used scissors to cut. Yeah, that's some work. That's some work that I would not do. Okay. And then we'll do this end. And this was already pressed, so we'll just add that to the end. And again, that's just securing that end so I can let it go. And then start with the top and a 1/4 inch seam. I can back stitch, and I don't need a lot. And I am not liking this one for some reason. It did not, this didn't look straight. But I'm going to see what it did. And if I don't like it, I'm going to take this one out. Let's see, backing fabrics. I'm just curious, what backing fabric is best? Okay. Oh, I still have one more to go. So Here's, I, so here's, so yeah, I struggle with, um, I struggle with answering that question. And I'll tell you why. Different strokes are for different folks. And depending on who your market is, who your people are, depends on what they like. So for example, there are people who sell quilts and they use sheets for backing. And it's not my preference. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that it's not my preference. But they prefer to use sheets to use as a backing. And sometimes the quality of the cotton sometimes doesn't match the front, because the thread count is different possibly for the sheet than it is for the fabric that you used, which means it's going to wash differently. It's going to wear and tear differently. But if you like it, I love it. You could, on the other end, the quilter snob end, if we will. The quilter snob end says that you buy, why is this not, this something is not right with this. What am I doing? Okay. I don't know what I was doing. The quilter snob end is to say you only buy quilters cotton. Manufacturers of quilters cotton could still have different qualities, different thicknesses, feels, things like that. So you still could be a little off and it still could shrink at a different rate. If I buy all of my fabric from Tula Pink, 9 times out of 10, it's going to wear at the same rate and it's going to shrink at the same rate if I treated all her fabric the same way. So there's some value to using all the same stuff. Are there people that use different things all the time? But it depends. So for me, I tend to use quilter's cotton, depending on who I'm making the quilt for. If I'm making a quilt for a child, and I think that they're going to tear it up after a couple years anyway, then I may do some things a little differently, and I will go to the lobby and I will buy their backing, which is 108 inches wide. And if I get it on sale, I'm probably getting it for like 8 a yard. Whereas if I go to the quilt shop, I might be getting it for 19 a yard. It's a different quality. It may fade a lot faster than the front, depending on what I use for the front. But it's the kid. And that probably wasn't going to last him anyway. But if it's going to be an heirloom, I might want to keep it longer. So it just depends. I say stay within your pocket and then work your way up. But if you're commissioning a quilt and the person is paying for it, then my suggestion is that I would use all of a similar product. If you're using quilter's cotton, I'll be at the quilter shop. Now, I might be getting it off the sale rack, but I would be at the quilter shop getting that fabric just because I do want it to work the same way. So I would get all Riley Blake, or I might get all batiks. I might not mix batiks and quilter's cottons together. It depends. But you really can mix and match, but you do need to be careful because there is a possibility of one tearing over the other. Some people use Minky on the back. And Minky is going to react a lot different because it's a different type of fabric than quilter's cotton. So it just, it depends. So I hate saying I think you should use, because not everybody can do, what I think. And I don't always do what I think, because if I can't afford what I think, I'm gonna get what I can afford. Or, I can find, like I said, a sale. I am good for going into the quilt shop, and the first thing that I will do is go to their sale room and see what they have on sale. And then I may get that. Some people will buy so quilter's backing is 108 inches wide. So for regular fabric, it's about 40 inches wide. So some people will buy 5-6 yards of fabric, regular fabric, and they will stitch all of it together to create the width that they need. Then you got to match prints in some cases, unless you get a solid. And then you have a seam, and you want to make sure you pay attention to that seam, yada, yada, yada. But at least with that, you might get closer to that quilter's cotton on the front and the back. It just depends. So I know that I went kind of all around Robin's barn, but like I said, it's hard. But if somebody is paying for the quilt, then what I'm saying is let them pay for whatever it is, or let them tell you no. So if you come back to them and you say, look, if you get for the front of the quilt 7 yards of fabric at 13 each, this is how much it's going to cost for almost 100 for just the front, and that doesn't include my work. Then I've got to get the batting, and I've got to get the backing. So that's another 100, right? So you might spend like 250. That's not including thread or your time. And so with all that, then what are you charging for it? Now they may say, oh, I don't want to spend that kind of money. Okay, well, I can go to Lobby and I can get it from there and spend a fraction of the cost. And so they're going to have something on sale if I catch it on the off week that they have it, because now they done dropped to what, 30%, 40%. So I might be able to get it for $5 a yard. And so then it's going to significantly cut the cost, but it may also affect the quality. And it's still going to be cute when I finish it, because I'm still going to give it the care and attention that it needs. And I'm still going to do it well. But that fabric may or may not react as well as quilter's cotton. Sometimes you luck up, sometimes you have no problems, and sometimes you do. And I do notice the difference when I buy the backing from them, but as many quilts as I make on live, yeah, we not buying all of that quilter's cotton from the quilter shop to get all this done. And when I'm gifting them to certain people, you lucky you got it as a gift. So it's going to last as long as it lasts if I gave it to you as a gift. Or if I gave it to you at cost and didn't charge you for what my labor was, you going to take the back that you get. That's just me. That's a Jenniferism. And I think, in this day and age, even like with bag making and garment making, people assume that it is cheaper to make something than it is to buy it. It is cheaper for me to make a quilt myself than it is for me to buy a quilt with the same fabric from somebody who makes quilts. That's cheaper. But I can go to Walmart and get a quilt cheaper than what I would make it for. That would be the difference. So if you want a Walmart quilt, go ahead and get your Walmart quilt. So batting, I usually use 100% cotton, or I use a 80-20. So usually that's the kind of batting that I will buy. And again, I'll get it on the roll because it's cheaper. And as many quilts as I make, even though the Doubting Thomas is in here, Shamir, I don't finish all the quilts that I should. And so we won't talk about all the quilt tops that I have that I need to finish. But I will buy it on the bulk because I can get more bang for my buck that way. But when I did the shop hops last year, I absolutely bought batting in each one of those shops that I hopped. Well, not each one, but in a lot of them, so that I would finish quilts. That was the goal. Like, you're not buying fabric, you need to buy batting to finish these quilts. So I like Quilter's Dream. That's one of my favorites, but I'm not going to tell you that it's not beneath me to get Heirloom or Mormon Natural. It depends on what you want the final one to look like, the final quilt to look like, how thin you want it, or how heavy or fluffy you may want that quilt to be. So that will play a role in what you buy as well. I did not put the video up for it, but somebody went out to the quilt shop and bought pieces of quilt batting because they had it on sale and it was cheaper than buying the regular one. And I can sew it all together to do some of my smaller quilts. So I would save money that way. So I find ways to save a couple coins, but that's totally up to you. I'm pressing my seams open. And I knew that happened. My corner is off just a little bit. And guess what? I will be okay with that. But if I wasn't, I would rip it out and do it again. So I have 4 more blocks just to press. They are all clipped together. So I just need to clip them apart and then just press them open. Remember, I did not press the seams, so that's why I have to press all 4 seams right now, or 2. Some people don't know handmade and mass-produced are not the same. Absolutely not. And wait a minute, and here's the thing, right? Or they don't care. Years ago, I think I was still in my 20s. And I had a young lady, I think I walked into her shop. I think I went there a couple times. She had a little like boutique in one of our local malls. It was called the Gallery back in the day. And she admired something that I was wearing, and we were talking about sewing. And this was before like it was really a thing, like we're talking in the 80s, 90s. And she wanted to know, no, she didn't have it at the local mall. She had it near my home. She did eventually move to the local mall. And she said to me, you know, would you be interested in making skirts and pillows and things like that, especially out of the Ankara fabric, for my shop? And of course, at the time, I was a little young and dumb. I wasn't that dumb. But I was like, sure, we could talk about it. And there's a possibility that I could, do some sewing for your shop. So she said to me, okay, not a problem. We can, work some things out. But here we go with but, right? She said, you can't sell it to me at a price where I can't resell it to make a profit. Okay. So needless to say, I did not blow up and become this wonderful seamstress for that place, because what we're not going to do is undersell me so that you can make a profit. But she knew like the cost of things, but she wanted something in theory that could have been mass produced by an individual that she could resell and make her profit, but it wouldn't give me full. So you're going to cut into my profit and take part of mine to resell something. That can't happen. But like I said, she got it, but she didn't get it. And I don't know if it was because I was young that she thought that I would go for that. No. Because it doesn't pay for me to do that work and undersell myself. So I need to be able to buy the fabric, make the thing, and feel like it was worth my time rather than her, gaining from it. I can just create, well, not then, I couldn't create a website because they didn't have websites back then, but I could have advertised what I made, and, people could have purchased it rather than me, allowing her to kind of take advantage of me. So it's, like I said, it was interesting back then. And, I know now, like, people say that wasn't your market or those weren't your people. One of the things that when we look at stuff, like, especially right around this time of year, so it's prom season, and students are beginning to find folks to make their dresses. And what amazes me in some cases, and this is not all seamstress, because there's some really good people out there that do some really good work. And then there are some people out there that do occasion work. And so you're going to pay for what you get. And sometimes you're paying for the illusion of what you get. So this person is charging you a lot of money for a bodycon dress that they added rhinestones to and feathers to, did some cutouts and added some lace, and they're like $2,000, $4,000. And I work in a high school, and those things look like they're getting ready to fall apart, or they're ill-fitting. Or it really may have been a nice dress, but they didn't tell that poor child you need the right undergarments to wear with this. But the child is happy because with the right angles, that picture looked phenomenal for them. And I'm sitting here like, well, where are these people at? Not that I want to make a prom dress, but where are these people at? Because I don't have them people asking me, can they spend millions for me to make a prom dress? So I just want to know where they are, because they clearly don't live in the hood. Okay. So here we go. We're coming into the home stretch. All of these, again, are the same. One thing that I will point out is that if your points do what they're supposed to do, you should have about a 1/4 inch down here from the point. So then that way your point doesn't get buried into the seam. Yes, Miss Geraldine, I'll be sleeping like a half an hour. I took a nap because I do the late night on Tuesday, so I do take a nap for that. But yes, I do sleep. These two are the same, so that's not what I want. Okay. So there's my look. Is that my look? That's my look. Okay. So with this, I'm getting ready, and you can see the points to the star, and then the points are out here, and then this is the center. So again, I'm going to put these two together. This is the mirror image. So I can place this way. And I can place this way. And I'm just doing it this way. I could have laid it out and did it the same 4-patch way, but it's going to work the same way. This is just going to rotate, and it's going to fit easily when I finish this. So I'm going to just slide this over to get my machine back. over here, and we're going to do 2 seams to put these 2 rows together, and then we're going to put the 2 rows together, and we'll be finished that block. Now I'm going to finish the whole block. We're going to do the border offline because really the star of the show is the star. So you just need to see the star. You don't need to worry about the border, because then I'm going to figure out whether I want a thicker border, thinner border. So I'll make that decision offline. And I usually do the borders offline. So I'm just going to flip this over and flip that over. And we're going to stitch. And we're going to use our clips. Because now that Miss Geraldine came in here, I'm going to pretend like I do things the way I'm supposed to. No, I have been using clips. Miss Geraldine is the GOAT of the greatest of all times, for me, of teaching how to long arm. And I am finally taking a class with her. Living Water Quilter. And it is with 2 other people. So Miss Sophia and Miss Fitzgerald, and I am loving it, and I will be digging into those videos this weekend. Because somebody had to get some fabric. Well, dig through the stash. Okay. Are you going to make a quilt? How many stars are you going to make? So this only has to be 1 star because it is going to be a big star. So this is going to be 1 star. I could have made the inside solid. I decided to give it a little bit of a twist, which is why I went with the light and the dark, the light green and the dark in the light purple in there. Okay, make sure everything lines up and clip. Okay, so this is, and again, I will pull this. This is the Baby Star quilt, and this is from A Diary of a Quilter, and you can just Google Diary of a Quilter, Baby Star quilt pattern. It is a free pattern. Good evening. How are you? Thank you, darling. It was like going with that, what do you call it? That Glenda pinkish purple thing. Oh, do I have to? I got something that I need to get done by. Is it Friday? That's what I get for saying that I was going to do something. Okay. Now, this one came out really cool. So that point lined up exactly the way it needed to. Thank you for the daily heartbeat. I'm good. I don't quilt, but I love to watch. Awesome. Well, thank you and welcome in. Thank you for the 2026s. Okay, so we have these both done. The top and the bottom are done. The center is going to look like that. So we're going to flip it over. And again, remember, I could press, or at this point, I could finger press. So I am going to finger press this open. And then line up the seams. And you'll notice there are times when I go quick and I go slow. And when it comes to lining up those seams, you want to go slow. Because the more time that you take to line them up, even though you can still mess up, the closer to getting them lined up as being as accurately as possible works. Okay. So what I will say as we're getting ready to come to a close for this is that this is an easy pattern. And you might say, girl, you started at 9 o'clock and it's a little after 11, right? But remember, I've been running my mouth for 2 hours. So if you are sitting and working and not talking, this would go faster. So I like quilts like this because, well, now my friends would be having grandkids. They wouldn't be having kids, hopefully. Some of them lost their minds, but not most of them. But if there's a quick grandkid gift that I have to give, this is quick. So I can make this in a couple hours and I could really put the border on and finish this like in a day. And so these are the kinds of things where like you're special, but you ain't that special, that I need to be intricate with something, but I can get a quilt together for a baby shower and get it done in enough time. And this, because it doesn't take as long to do, if somebody's paying for this, then they're not paying for a long time. You're still going to pay for my talent, but you're not paying for hours of work, hours upon hours beyond hours of work. So there could be a cheaper cost associated with this type of quilt because it didn't take me that long to make it. Because if it took me days to make it, I had a whole bunch of small half square triangles, curves, turns, piecing, all that other stuff, then that cost has to go over to the client. But if I can sit here and just kind of whip these up and get these done, and again, you know, I'm not rushing. So I'm not saying rush to get something together. I'm just saying it goes together quickly. Then you can save the person a couple coins and make the fabric the star of the show. So there are some really cool fabrics that would really run itself well with a quilt that you would not be sitting there saying, you know, hey, like this is dull and boring. No, you made the fabric stand out. Thank you, thank you, thank you again for getting your heart me's. Thank you for the 2026s. Where am I located? I'm right outside of Philly. I'm a Philly person. And are you going to quilt it? Yes, ma'am. Not tonight, but yes, I will. I have a Bernina long arm machine, so I can quilt it. But again, this is small enough where I would have done this on my Husqvarna Viking. So most baby quilts, I absolutely quilted on my long arm machine. I did not, on my domestic machine. I did not quilt them on a long arm. And I want to say, I don't know what their rentals are. We did rentals back in the day, and the rentals were like about maybe 15 an hour, 20 an hour, somewhere around there. And depending on what you were working on, you might get, you know, like one quilt done in 2-3 hours. If I were working on a baby quilt, I might decide to have 2 of them done and stretch them out on my on the long arm so that I could get 2 done at one time. And once I got them all loaded up and everything else like that floated onto the long arm, then I could, in the same amount of time I got one done by doing a quick meander or something like that, I could get the two done. And that worked out really well for me in getting things done faster. And like I said, I didn't do the baby quilt, but like that's just an example of what I would do to kind of cut the cost. So then instead of, let's say 3 hours later, having one thing done, you would have two. Okay, let's just press these seams. And like I said, I would add a border. I'm going to make some decisions about what that border will look like. But you will see the star. And again, the important part of this is the star, more so than the border, because I'll make some decisions as to whether I want this to finish at 39 or whether I want this to finish a little bit wider. So I need to think about what that border is going to look like before I actually attach it. I have a couple suggestions, but again, I mean, a couple ideas, but I did like audition my greens and purples together, and I may come in with either a deeper purple and stay in the purple family, or a deeper green, and then go with a print of some sort on the outside. So I'll debate that for a second and then get that on there. But in the meantime, I'll be working on that other project that I need to get done. That was supposed to be finished by the 12th. Okay, and I'm just going down those seams and pressing those seams flat. Because of the size of this, even though I've pressed all of the seams, I would take this to my bigger iron and I would press the whole thing and get it really, really, really nice and flat. And of course, like I said, add those borders. How are you doing, darling? Can you do a quick sentence on what you're making? Okay, and let me stand up here. So just before I show you this final result, this is the quilt here. It's the Baby Star quilt pattern. It is from a Diary of a Quilter. It is a free pattern. You can use, as they have up here, I use 10-inch cuts that I cut on my own. You can use layer cakes if you like. She told you to read through the directions, and again, for her, she told you to cut these like this. I did not cut them like this. I did use the 2 at a time method. So that's how I chose to do those, because I think that it's easier than to cut and deal with the bias. And so again, this is a simple, easy quilt pattern for a beginner quilter. So it makes the star. Again, I would give it a good press. This is not 39 yet. It needs the border on here. Thank you. It needs the border on there. So it's not 39 inches wide yet. But this is all made out of half square triangles. So it is a really cute quilt. It is a quick quilt that you can make, and it doesn't require a whole lot of energy. So I have a couple more videos that will be dropping about the half square triangle with what you can do with it. I will share this with you. If you look here, for people who are doing half square triangles, all of the seams are coming to this point. So I have these seams, and these seams. So if I flip this on this side, you can see how all those seams are crossing. So the bulkiest part is right here. So when you're long arming, there's going to be, or quilting it, there's going to be some bumpiness here, but if you just kind of press the heck out of it as much as you possibly can, it'll lay as flat as you can possibly get it. It's not going to be completely flat because you've got all those seams coming there, so there is a lot of bulk. That's one of the reasons why some folks don't like to do closed seams. They like to open it up because it distributes the seams on either side all the way around. So that was something that I just, wanted to point out because that was a question and I wanted to make sure that I addressed that. But if you take your time, you do your clips, most of your seams will line up, if not all of them. But if they don't all line up, real rap, from a distance, you can't see, unless you're a picky person, you can't see which one of these, unless you're looking for it, isn't lined up perfectly. And I could rip it out and do it again if I felt some kind of way. But again, you can't see it because you're normally not looking for it. So you're not looking to see. But if you didn't square these up, you absolutely would see it because then it would be really shifted off. But because these are all squared up, they were all 9 inches. I made sure everything was 9.5 inches. Then I got the look that I got at the end. So cutting accurately is key. Making sure that you have great cutting tools, not the brand, but making sure that you have the long ruler, a square ruler helps. Making sure that you have a great 1/4 inch seam. Pressing your fabric. And last but not least, trimming it up really helps to get the best product that you could deliver. So all of those are key. It starts with the cuts and it ends with the trimming. And you can trim along the way. If I chose, I could have trimmed each one of those blocks as I created it. But like I said, I do like to do it in a 4-patch. 4 patches are coming up next week. This week has been all about half square triangles. Again, I have about 3 more videos that I need to post. They're already edited and ready to go. I'm working on the next couple videos that need to come out. They're snippets, so they won't take that long. So again, thank you everyone for this evening sitting through, and for those of you who need it for the baby star one final time, this is the baby star pattern. And this is by Diary of a Quilter. It is a free download, Baby Star Quilt. Her name is Amy Smart. You can do a total scrappy quilt. Can you imagine this in like all Ankara? Like you could do a total scrappy quilt. You could do it with baby clothes. So you don't have to use cotton, but it's going to react differently and you're going to have to do some stabilizing, but you could. There's a ton of different things that you could do. I'm going to think about the border. You can see that they used a print. I'm probably going to use a solid to do what I'm getting ready to do with this. And I may add an extra border. I haven't decided yet because I might leave it as a table topper. I don't know. Or maybe somebody's having a baby and I just don't know. Actually, there are people that have babies and but anyway, so I could give this as a baby, as a quilt. But thank you again, like I said, for joining me. All things half square triangles. More videos will load. I will post the next project for next week that we will be working on. It will be somewhere around the 4-patch or patchwork. It'll be something simple and easy to do. Again, we are focused on beginner quilters. If there's something you would like to see, please inbox me, DM me, let me know. I can either create the video or I can go live and we can work on it. So, hey, Brooklyn Timmy, how are you? So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the taps. We are at, wow, 30.
35K. Thank you so much. So thank you for getting us at 35K today. I appreciate you. Thank you for the 2026s, for gifting those and the roses for some of you, for getting your daily heart me, and for interacting, because that is the important part, is the engagement in these lives. So thank you so much for that. Have a great evening. And yes, if I know she's not on here, but I'm going to bed because I have to get up in the morning and I have been pulling a lot of late nights. So thank you, everyone. Happy quilting. And remember, Black Sewing Network, for the month of January, we're doing all easy sewing. Have a good one.